Join me in this video as I sew our new version of the Lehonore dress. Although we've kept a similar design, we've expanded this pattern from 6 to 10 sizes. Plus, we've added a small new detail. The dress now has pockets. Originally, the pattern comes with written instructions, but we're going to include this video as well. The skirt of this dress has a circular cut, which is why I'm folding the fabric in half. I'm going to cut the front skirt piece on the fold.
However, the back will consist of 2 separate pieces, since there's a seam down the center back for the zipper. As I always say, cut the large pieces first, then use the leftover fabric to cut the smaller bodice pieces. Depending on the type of dress you want to make, whether it's more casual or more formal, you can interface the bodice pieces. You can even add boning to the lining, just as I'm going to do in this video. All of these elements will give the dress more structure and stiffness, but they can also make it a bit more uncomfortable to wear on a day-to-day basis. So you'll have to decide based on your goal. Here's an overview of the bodice pieces. Let's start from the center and work toward the back. We'll join the 2 center front pieces by placing them right sides together and pressing them open. We'll continue by sewing the front side panel seam, carefully shaping it to follow the curve of the bust. You can make a few small notches in the curviest areas so the fabric conforms better when ironing. It's important, and I always recommend, that you use a sewing ham when pressing the bust area. It will help you achieve a much nicer shape. We'll repeat these same steps until we reach the center back. The outer body is finished. Now let's repeat the same steps to sew the lining. But if you want to add boning to the lining, there's one detail you need to keep in mind when cutting the fabric. To insert boning, we need a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. Some parts of the pattern are only 1 centimeter wide, specifically the side panel seams on both the front and back. So if you want to add boning, you must add 0.5 centimeters to the seam allowance on the lining in these areas. Another difference if you're adding boning is that you'll need to press the seams towards the sides.
After pressing the seams toward the side, we'll sew along the seam allowance to create the tracks. If your boning is 8 millimeters wide, make a 1 centimeter track. If the boning is 1 centimeter wide, make a 1.2 centimeter track, so there's enough space for the boning to slide in smoothly. We'll make this stitching on all the seams where we want a boning rod, that is, on all the lining pieces. Next, place the two body pieces right sides together and sew along the entire neckline. Since the neckline is curved, we can make a few notches, then fold the seam allowance toward the lining and sew an edge stitching. This edge stitching runs very close to the seam, about a couple of millimeters away. Now turn the piece right side out and press the entire neckline edge. Depending on the fabric, the lining may end up longer than the outer fabric. In any case, you'll need to adjust the two layers of fabric so that no puckers form between them. You can baste it or pin it in place and try it on to be sure. In fact, you might want to try it on after inserting the boning. Little by little, measure the length of each track and insert the boning. Remember that the boning must stay within the seam allowance so that later, when we sew the body to the skirt waistline, we don't catch it with the needle. Otherwise, it could break.
In case you're wondering, you could have sewn the seams to attach the boning directly onto the outer fabric, just that those stitches would be visible. If you want a cleaner, more polished finish, the boning is added to the lining. Boning, especially plastic boning, often comes bent. Since they're made of plastic, you can heat them with the iron, always placing something to protect them in between, such as layers of fabric. You can reshape them so they aren't bent. Once you've verified that the bodice fits well and there's no puckering between the lining and the outer fabric, you can make a stitching 0.5 centimeter from the waistline and trim off the excess fabric. And now, let's move on to the skirt. As you can see, the front piece is a half circle.
We're going to add pockets to the side seam. The pocket's position is marked by notches that should align with the pocket's own notches. I like to reinforce the seam area with a strip of interfacing. Place one of the pocket pieces right sides together with the skirt, aligning the notches. Stitch from notch to notch, creating a C shape with the stitching. The depth of the C is the same as the seam allowance, which in this case is 1.5 centimeters. At the corners, you'll need to make diagonal notches so you can turn the pocket right side out easily. And you'll finish this small flap with an overlock or zigzag stitch. Turn the pocket right side out over the seam allowance and sew an edge stitching along the pocket. Turn the pocket toward the inside of the garment and press it. Now, take the second pocket piece and place it right sides together with the previous one. Pin the entire edge and sew along the seam allowance all around the curved edge. You can finish the edge of the pocket with a serger or with a bias binding. At this point, the pocket is actually sewn in place. What we need to do now is join the front of the skirt to the back pieces so that the pocket is truly inserted into a seam. Place the front and back right sides together, matching the entire side seam. Then sew along the seam allowance, but be careful not to close the pocket opening while sewing. The stitch must go just below it so you can still put your hand inside. You can finish this seam with an overlock or bias tape. Press it well, and now the pockets are truly finished.
The next step is to attach the skirt to the bodice along the waistline. Place both pieces right sides together. Pin them in place and sew along the seam allowance. When making the stitch, be very careful not to sew over the boning. And again, you can finish this seam with an overlock or bias tape. Before inserting the zipper at the center back, you need to finish the center back seam. You can do this again with an overlock or bias tape. And now we'll actually add the invisible zipper. If you're not quite sure how to sew this type of zipper, I'll leave a specific tutorial in the video's description box. The zipper is sewn in, but we still need to finish the seam all the way to the hem of the dress. So place the two center back pieces right sides together and sew along the seam allowance, from the hem to the end of the zipper stitching. A very important detail to keep in mind with a circular skirt is that many parts of the skirt are cut on the bias. This means that depending on the fabric, due to the fabric's own weight, some parts may sag and become longer. For this reason, once you've inserted the zipper, leave the dress on a hanger overnight so the fabric can shuttle or stretch out as needed. Then, measure the length again and adjust the parts where the hem has become uneven. Once again, I've attached a tutorial that explains this process in a bit more detail. At the hem of the dress, you can make a narrow 3mm hem. I explain this step by step in detail on our blog. And to finish the top of the zipper, just fold the excess fabric behind the seam allowance and secure it with a small hand stitch. And with that, the dress is finished.